I'm Chris Newton, creator of Feed, the Vampire Mythos RPG. In 10-Minute Mythos, I prove the endless possibilities of vampire role-playing by taking one random inspiration and using it to sketch out an original vampire mythos, all in 10 minutes. No prep, no script, just one gamer who loves a good vampire story. Wish me luck. Hey everybody, welcome to 10-Minute Mythos. This is a special episode because it is impromptu, as I sometimes do for these episodes. What's happened is that I've been listening to some podcasts on earwolf.com. I was just listening to an episode of Comedy Bang Bang, which now that I think about it might actually be an old episode. But it's the first time I heard it, and vampires came up. And specifically, the hosts on the show posited that Richard Belzer is actually a hypnotic vampire who has persuaded the world that there is such a thing as law and order, while he's actually hypnotizing people on TV and just consuming human beings on screen. So I decided to simply turn on my camera and my microphone and make this my prompt. So I'm gonna put up an annotation somewhere and link this episode, and we'll just go from there and take this basic premise and run with it for 10 minutes and see how it goes. So what I think is so funny about this and so cool is it actually, going it from the protagonist's side, it would be really fun to play somebody who's in the public eye as a vampire trying to hide. So what I'm thinking is something like Law and Order actually would be great, but I think it would actually be fun to do some stuff about fandom in this, like how you relate to like the business in showbiz, because I'm assuming you're all playing vampires who are basically like the cast on a show that is a cover for vampiric activity that now threatens to go public. And so you're having to negotiate the celebrity and all that stuff. So it'd be great to engage like show business, but also fans, and also like just, culture generally, and like navigating your life as a celebrity. So I would maybe want to go with a show that has more of an active fan base than Law and Order. So what I'm thinking actually is maybe like a sort of trendy, like a show that would have a Tumblr associated with it, or lots of them, like Sherlock does, or Doctor Who, or something like that. So maybe like a BBC production even would be fun. What you could do actually is, this is like story profile stuff, say that it would be fun to have a story profile that describes in very general terms who the actors on this show are. Like, one respected stage actor who's kind of like the anchor of the show and now like is in his waning career. And, one like sort of like the Ice-T from, Law and Order SVU, like the legit like street artist who now has like moved on to the big time and is on, a BBC show, and is kind of like on the verge, like, is this person a sellout or not? Maybe the character who like plays the big smarty pants on the show, but is actually really dim-witted in real life, and maybe has like really unpopular political views that everyone has to try to keep under control. Anyway, you just sort of define those in the story profile, and then everybody can kind of build characters to match them. So you'd still have lots of latitude about who you play individually. And then what the game would be about is just basically you've been using the show as a cover. The production allows you to travel all over the place. There's all this money involved with it. Celebrities, can kind of get in everywhere. But at the same time, what I'm thinking is maybe this started small time, like. It was just a show that was just sort of a cover, by being, like maybe these people found each other. Maybe the sort of elder statesman, the elder like stage actor was the first, and he brought in the others. He embraced the others, to use the Vampire the Masquerade terminology. But he turned the others into vampires, and now they have this little like celebrity clique. And they use the show as a cover to stay together and feed together and all that stuff. But then the show blows up and gets like this unexpected youth audience. So now these guys are all over the place and breaking into American markets too. It's becoming a worldwide thing, and there's much more focus on them than they want. But they can't get out of their responsibilities because that just draws more attention. So they now have to try to negotiate it. You have the players come up with like what the show itself is going to be about. Although I think it would be really fun for it to be some kind of strange procedural. Like maybe a police procedural would work, but maybe even something a little bit farther afield, some other job. They could be firefighters, or something not quite as cliche as the police procedural. But anyway, that's a minor point. It might be fun actually if the show had some kind of supernatural element, but like a somewhat like not vampires, just some other random kind of fantasy or sci-fi premise. Um, Actually, if it were a show about like conspiracy team, like these are guys who are almost like a Torchwood type of show, and but these guys are like on the track of conspiracy that can involve aliens or whatever. So that way you would have the fan base who's like, the sexy dudes fan base who are all into the sexy dudes on the show, but then you'd also have the conspiracy fan base and like people who think this is real and that the show is about real supernatural hidden stuff, which is half right because the characters are actually vampires, but it's really just a coincidence. So anyway, so that's your whole setting. You've got your characters there. So in terms of how to implement this rules wise, I think it would be cool to have vampires who have like lots of social powers. I like the hypnotic angle and being able to mess with people's minds. And in fact, it makes me think of the very kind of immature vampire campaigns that I played in back in my high school gaming days, where you would do things like mind control people into selling you a house, which is like such a complicated process that it became farcical very quickly. And like, dominating each other is trying to like, no, your hat belongs to me, your fancy hat is mine. And just using your dark powers for all these trivial things. It would be cool to give hypnotic powers, powers of persuasion of various kinds, little kind of stealth stuff. So like low key stuff more devoted to like general investigation, political, less combat stuff, not so much like the claws and the shape shifting and all that. So that this way characters could get involved with things like, getting that big role, or, maybe you're like going through a divorce and there's a potential that the divorce proceedings are going to reveal your secret life. So that would actually be kind of fun. What I'm thinking of for tone is almost something like Being Human, but it would be a little more on the comedy side, but not too much. Like I think it would be it would be a comedy game, it would be a comedy premise, but at the same time you'd want the characters to be taking it fairly seriously, and for them to be this is a weird thing to bring into it, but like almost something like the Mary Tyler Moore Show. I know that seems like a strange analogy to make, but it's a show where you basically had characters. It was a comedy featuring characters who seemed like basically serious people who like had a job and had things they cared about. But the comedy really just emerged from the situations that they were in. It kind of avoided going too broad most of the time, I think. That would be just the right tone for this. And in terms of like, so we've got their powers. The strain, I think it would be great if this is like an ancient lineage. And so that way you're implying a world with like all these ancient dark powers who have a very set way like to be monsters in the world. And then your linchpin character would be your sort of stage actor who, or whoever it is who brought everyone into vampirism. It could be equally fun if you had like the youngest actor be the one who was a vampire first, who then, gave this respected stage actor vampirism as a way to kind of preserve them forever. So however the players wanted to work that out, you never want to constrain players' choices too much. They have to be invested in their characters, which means they have to have a lot of creative input. But yeah, I think basically this would be a band of vampires that belongs to this one person who comes from that like ancient hidden world, White Wolf style, like worldwide vampire conspiracy. But now they've gone totally off the deep end with it, and like they're much closer to the public eye than they're supposed to be. And they're dealing with problems that were never envisioned by like all the received vampire wisdom about how to stay hidden among humans. Vampires don't deal with showbiz; they don't deal with all this stuff, and so it's sort of like new territory for everybody. Those would be great NPCs too, to have very serious vampires. I think basically have a drama world with comedy characters in it, who are just in like a really weird situation. And trying to deal with this. So you've got your strain, basically. Transmission, I think, should not be much of an issue, something you do deliberately. Although it could still come up, but it would come up in dramatic circumstances, like, I'm going to do this for my girlfriend, or, there's somebody who finds out about vampirism and wants it and threatens to out them or whatever. You can still use it dramatically, but I don't think the threat of accidentally turning people would be very useful. and it would make it too hard for them to stay hidden, which is important. That needs to be a continuing tension, so it needs to be possible for them. The hypnotism, you'd want to push the power so that they can stay hidden by being more and more obvious with their powers, paradoxically. Like, they can totally hypnotize everybody in the audience one night and make them believe something didn't just happen on the show. But it's more and more audacious use of supernatural power, which would kind of, again, this sort of feeds into farce, pushing it further and further. So my time is up. So yeah, that's the basic idea. BBC show featuring a bunch of actors who just want to be low-key vampires together and use the production of a small BBC procedural as their cover. Then the show blows up, becomes a worldwide phenomenon, and they have to try to stay hidden as vampires and somehow extricate themselves from this tricky situation before they are discovered by their nutso fans or assassinated by the ancient conspiracy of vampires, of which they are the most comical and shameful part. I like this idea.